My beloved child, do not move past this moment too quickly. There is something that has been sitting quietly at the edge of your awareness, something you may have sensed without ever finding the right words for it. Perhaps you have noticed a change in your soulmate whenever certain subjects arise. Maybe there have been moments when they looked ready to speak, only to hide behind a smile, change the conversation, or suddenly become distant. You may have assumed it was fear, emotional overwhelm, or simply their difficulty expressing what they feel. But there is something deeper beneath those reactions. Your soulmate has been carrying a secret connected to a loss that affected your life, and the weight of keeping it hidden has become increasingly difficult for them to bear. For a long time, they convinced themselves that silence was the safest choice. They believed that telling you the truth might reopen your wounds or destroy whatever connection remained between you. They thought that perhaps being loving, supportive, and quietly present would eventually make the past less important. But unspoken truth does not simply disappear. It settles deeper inside a person. It returns through memories, dreams, sudden sadness, uncomfortable silences, and moments when the past unexpectedly collides with the present. Your soulmate has lived somewhere between regret and fear, wanting desperately to come closer, while also fearing that complete honesty could make you see them differently forever. There was a particular moment they have replayed countless times in their mind, wondering whether another choice, another action, or another decision could have changed what happened. And behind all of those memories sits the question they have never been able to escape. If you knew exactly how connected they were to that painful chapter of your life, would you still be able to love them? The loss you experienced was not something your soulmate deliberately planned or intended to cause. What surrounds this story is not a picture of calculated cruelty, but a painful chain of circumstances, a moment that went wrong, a decision made under pressure or fear, and consequences that became far greater than anyone anticipated. Yet your soulmate has never found much comfort in the fact that they did not intend the outcome. Inside their mind, intention has never completely erased responsibility. They have carried the thought that perhaps something they did, failed to do, or chose in that moment contributed to what happened. Again and again, they have imagined another version of that day. They have wondered what would have happened if they had acted sooner, spoken differently, made another choice, or recognized what was unfolding before it was too late. That private guilt may explain many things you previously struggled to understand about their behavior. It may explain why certain conversations made them unusually uncomfortable, why they seemed deeply affected when you spoke about the person you lost, or why they sometimes asked careful questions and then suddenly stopped themselves. You may have interpreted their reactions simply as compassion, and compassion may have been part of it. But there was also recognition. They knew details they could not easily explain. They understood emotions that seemed strangely familiar to them. They noticed things before you finished describing them because somewhere inside, they were not hearing the story as a stranger would. They were remembering their own connection to it. Perhaps there was even a moment when they almost confessed something, when their expression changed and the words seemed ready to come out, only for them to retreat and redirect the conversation. You may have forgotten that moment, but they did not. They have been carrying it with them ever since, and now the silence is becoming harder for them to maintain. The closer they have felt to you, the more impossible it has become to keep separating love from the truth. They may have once believed that protecting the relationship meant protecting the secret, but they are beginning to understand that genuine closeness cannot survive indefinitely behind unanswered questions. This is why their behavior may feel different now. They may seem more reflective, more emotional, or strangely hesitant whenever the past comes near. Part of them is preparing for the possibility that the truth will finally have to be spoken. Not because they suddenly stopped being afraid, but because continuing to hide may now hurt more than facing the consequences of honesty. They know they cannot change what happened. They cannot return to that day and make another decision. They cannot give you back what was lost or remove the pain that followed. What they can do is finally stop pretending that the past has nothing to do with them. The confession they have been avoiding is not simply about explaining an old event. It is about admitting how deeply that event has shaped them, how much regret they have carried, and how frightened they have been that the truth would cost them your love. If they finally open that door, what they need most is not an immediate answer, but the space to tell the truth completely. You deserve the truth too, not because it will necessarily change everything, but because you should never have to build your understanding of your own story around pieces that someone else chose to keep hidden. The moment of revelation may be painful, but sometimes truth becomes the beginning of understanding where silence could only create more distance. Their heart has been divided between two painful choices. One side has wanted to finally tell you everything, while the other has been terrified that honesty would make you leave. Understand what makes this so difficult for them. They did not develop feelings for you and then casually choose to conceal something this serious. In many ways, loving you is what made the secret impossible to carry. Before your connection became meaningful, they could convince themselves that the past belonged to another chapter and could stay buried there. But as their feelings deepened, every moment of closeness made the silence heavier. Your kindness reminded them that you were trusting someone who knew something you did not. Your faith in them made their private guilt more painful. Whenever you talked about honesty, loyalty, forgiveness, or giving people another chance, they silently wondered whether those beliefs would remain the same if you knew the complete story. Eventually, they reached an emotional limit. Something recent shifted their thinking, but it was not a confrontation or some dramatic discovery. Nobody arrived with proof. Nobody forced the secret into the open. Instead, you may have said something completely ordinary that carried enormous meaning for them. Perhaps you spoke about the person you lost, the difficulty of forgiving, or the pain created when someone keeps information hidden while believing they are doing it for another person's protection. You may have thought you were simply expressing yourself, but your words reached directly into the place they had spent years avoiding. Later, when they were alone, those words kept returning. For the first time, remaining silent seemed more frightening than telling you the truth. Picture them in a quiet room after everything else has settled down. Nothing around them looks unusual, yet internally they are struggling with a decision that feels enormous. They reach for their phone, open your conversation, and begin writing. Then they stop. They delete the message and try again. Once more, they erase everything. Their mind runs through every possible reaction. They imagine you becoming furious, questioning why they waited so long, doubting every memory you have shared, or deciding that the relationship can never be the same. They imagine you asking the question they fear most. Why did you let me believe you had nothing to do with this? Yet eventually another thought appears. What if the truth does not destroy everything? What if it hurts deeply, but finally ends the years of hiding? What if you could understand the sadness they have carried without pretending that understanding means removing responsibility? That possibility is frightening because hope itself can feel dangerous to someone who has spent years expecting rejection or punishment. There is also something important about the secret that you may not know. Your soulmate did not openly discuss their connection to this tragedy with everyone around them. Only a few people knew pieces of what had happened, and even those people probably never understood how deeply it affected them. Some encouraged them to move forward. Others reminded them that it had been an accident and that the past could not be changed. But those explanations never settled the argument happening inside their mind. They remembered one detail that others could not carry for them. There had been a moment when they sensed something was wrong. That moment became the center of their regret. Before everything changed, there was an opportunity when your soulmate could have reacted differently. Maybe they noticed a warning sign, an unsafe circumstance, a problem that should have been taken more seriously. Exhaustion, a rushed choice, or simply an inner feeling telling them that something was not right. They considered saying something, but they hesitated. Perhaps someone nearby reassured them. Perhaps circumstances were moving too quickly. Perhaps everyone believed the situation would work out normally. Whatever the exact circumstances were, your soulmate did not act strongly enough. And afterward, that hesitation became the memory they could never escape. This is why, privately, they use the word responsible, even if everyone else describes what happened as an accident. They are not saying they deliberately caused someone's death. Their pain comes from believing that they might have been able to interrupt the chain of events and failed to do so. That distinction matters because it explains why ordinary reassurance never truly removed their guilt. And there is another connection they have kept hidden. The person you lost had crossed paths with your soulmate before you ever knew there was a connection between them. It was not necessarily a close relationship. Their lives may have briefly overlapped through a mutual acquaintance, a particular location, an event, a journey, or some other ordinary circumstance that seemed completely insignificant at the time. Yet your soulmate remembered it. Long before you understood the connection, they already recognized it. Then came the moment when you showed them an old photograph. Something inside them immediately went still. They may have controlled their expression so well that you saw nothing unusual. But internally, they were no longer standing in that moment with you. They were suddenly looking at a face they already knew, and a buried memory they had spent years trying not to revisit came rushing back. For a moment, seeing that photograph took your soulmate somewhere far away from the present. They remembered the day they had spent years wishing they could erase, the confusion, the hurried voices, the people trying to understand what had happened, and then the moment the news came that someone had died. But what changed everything was what happened immediately afterward. They looked at you. Until that instant, they had been carrying the burden of a tragedy and the belief that they had somehow failed to prevent it. Suddenly, that tragedy had a face they loved. They were looking at someone who had cared deeply for the person who was gone, and from that moment, their feelings toward you became tangled with guilt. This may explain why their affection sometimes felt complicated, why they seemed determined to protect you while also keeping an emotional distance, and why they occasionally appeared to struggle with feelings they could not explain. They even considered removing themselves from your life completely. They thought disappearing would be kinder than remaining close while hiding something so important. They convinced themselves that distance might spare you from discovering the truth, yet every attempt to walk away only showed them how deeply attached they had become. They missed your presence, remembered your voice, and thought about the trust you had placed in them. Eventually, another possibility began taking shape. Perhaps their closeness to you was not an invitation to escape their past, but an opportunity to finally face it. This does not mean every tragedy has a hidden purpose, or that painful events become acceptable because love follows them. Some mistakes remain painful, and some consequences cannot be undone. But facing reality can still create room for honesty, responsibility, healing, and freedom from a secret that has controlled someone's life for years. Your soulmate has reached a point where the question is no longer whether the truth should come out, but how they could possibly begin saying it. They have imagined the opening sentence again and again. They might start by saying there is something you deserve to know about the person you lost, but even those words feel terrifying. They might explain that there is something important about their past, yet that sounds too distant from what they truly need to reveal. They may even consider telling you that they knew this person before they ever knew you, but they know that sentence would only lead to deeper questions. Every possible beginning eventually reaches the same frightening moment. They must admit that their life was connected to the circumstances surrounding that loss. What frightens them most is not simply your anger or the possibility that you might leave. They fear watching your expression change when you understand what they have been hiding. They fear seeing trust turn into uncertainty and wondering whether every good memory between you will suddenly look different. Yet something inside them has finally begun to understand that love cannot remain healthy when it depends forever on carefully chosen pieces of the truth. There is also a timing that may be pushing them forward. A meaningful date connected to the person you lost may be approaching, a birthday, anniversary, remembrance, or even a particular season that brings old memories back. Your soulmate has noticed how certain times of year affect you, even when you say very little. They have watched you become quieter and more reflective, and each year those same periods awaken their own memories. This year, however, they do not want to remain beside you while carrying information you have never been given. Something within them is saying that before this painful period passes again, they need to finally speak. When that conversation happens, remember that you are allowed to experience whatever comes naturally. Anger, grief, disbelief, confusion, compassion, disappointment, or several emotions at once are all possible, and none of them makes you cruel or unreasonable. You do not owe anyone an immediate decision about what the revelation means for your relationship. Forgiveness, if you eventually choose it, does not mean pretending the past never happened. Compassion does not require you to ignore your own boundaries, and loving someone does not mean carrying their guilt for them. Your soulmate may understand this, which is why they are not necessarily preparing to demand instant forgiveness. They are preparing to tell their version of what happened and finally stop running from the questions that have followed them. But there is still something they themselves have not fully understood. A detail from the final hours before the tragedy has recently returned to their attention. For years, they believed their memory of the last conversation before the death was complete. They thought they knew what had been said, when it happened, and what followed afterward. Then, unexpectedly, they came across something they had not seen in years. It was not a message meant for you. It belonged to someone connected to the events surrounding that day. Your soulmate had been searching for something completely unrelated when they discovered an old conversation that had been archived and forgotten. There was a timestamp, a message thread, and words they had never expected to see again. At first, they simply stared at the screen. Something about the timing felt wrong. The memory they had trusted for years suddenly seemed incomplete, and for the first time, they began wondering whether the story they had been carrying and the responsibility they had placed upon themselves might contain another missing piece. Then they noticed the timestamp, and suddenly the story they had carried for years no longer fit together. They had always believed one important conversation happened after a particular event, but the record showed something completely different. The conversation had taken place before it. That single detail forced them to reconsider the entire sequence. If their memory was wrong, then perhaps they had not been the only person who knew something was wrong. Someone else may have recognized the danger first. Someone else may have made an important decision or kept information from them. Your soulmate read the old message repeatedly, and their hands began to shake, because the certainty they had lived with for so long was beginning to collapse. The message was short, but its meaning was enormous. It indicated that the person you lost had already expressed concern about what was happening that day. They had questioned whether they should continue with the plan and had spoken to someone about it. Your soulmate had never known about that exchange. Then they saw the response. Suddenly, their confession could no longer be limited to admitting their own regret. There was another side to the story that had been hidden from them as well. This is why you should not rush toward a simple conclusion. Tragedies are often more complicated than the guilt a person places upon themselves. Your soulmate may have spent years believing the entire burden belonged to them. Their hesitation may still matter. Their failure to speak up may still be something they regret. But saying, "Everything was my fault," can sometimes turn a complicated chain of decisions into one painful sentence. They are beginning to see that distinction now. And because of that realization, they no longer want to tell you only what they did. They also feel compelled to show you what they discovered. There is a name attached to that old conversation, and it is a name you recognize. When your soulmate saw that name, they froze, because they understood immediately that revealing everything could affect more than your relationship with them. It could change the way you viewed another person you may have trusted for years. They had prepared themselves to accept your anger. They had imagined telling you about the warning they ignored, the choice they regretted, and the moment they wished they could reverse. What they had never prepared for was discovering that someone else might have known more than they did. For one night, they seriously considered destroying the evidence. Their intention was not to escape responsibility. They were afraid of what another revelation might do to your life. They imagined you losing whatever peace you had managed to build, reconsidering old conversations, and questioning memories that had seemed safe for years. Their finger remained over the screen until something unexpected happened. Your name appeared on their phone. You sent a simple message, completely unaware of what they were facing. There was nothing dramatic in your words. It may have been something kind, familiar, or reassuring, but it reminded them of the person you are and of the trust you have placed in them. In that instant, they knew they could not erase the truth simply because it was painful. They saved the message, preserved a copy, and finally put the phone down. Then they cried quietly, not because they had suddenly solved everything, but because they realized there was nowhere left to hide. That night, they made a decision. They would tell you what they knew, the tragedy, the warning, their hesitation, the guilt they carried, their connection to the person you lost, and the new evidence they had uncovered. They believed they were finally ready to face the consequences. But before they could speak to you, something happened that changed the situation again. After years of complete silence, the person connected to that old conversation suddenly appeared again. There was no friendly introduction, no explanation for why they had returned, and no attempt to ease your soulmate into what was coming. The message was brief, but it immediately created a new sense of fear. They knew your soulmate had discovered something, and before your soulmate told you anything, there was still another part of that night that remained unknown. Your soulmate could not move past those words. Only moments earlier, they had believed they were finally prepared to face you and explain everything they had been carrying, their regret, their hesitation, their connection to the tragedy, and the evidence they had recently uncovered. Now they realized that what they thought was the complete story might actually have been only one section of it. The past they had spent years trying to understand suddenly seemed unfinished again. They read the message repeatedly, wondering what this person knew and why they had waited so long to speak. Then another message arrived, and this time it included an old photograph from the day the tragedy occurred. At first, your soulmate looked at it without seeing anything unusual. It appeared to be nothing more than an ordinary image from a painful day, but they kept studying it. They examined the people, the surroundings, the background, and every small detail they had previously overlooked. Then something caught their attention. Someone was standing in the background near the person you lost. Your soulmate recognized the face almost immediately, and their entire body seemed to freeze. This was someone who had always insisted they were never present that day. According to everything your soulmate had been told, this person should not have been there at all. Yet the photograph suggested otherwise. That single discovery did not instantly prove that this person had caused anything or that they were responsible for the tragedy. It did something more important first. It created a question that could no longer be ignored. If this person had truly been there, why had they denied it? What were they doing there? Who else knew? And why had this detail remained hidden for so many years? Your soulmate had believed they were finally reaching the end of a secret they had carried almost alone. Instead, they had unknowingly stepped into a much deeper mystery. The photograph forced your soulmate to question memories they had trusted for years. They began replaying that painful day, but now they noticed details they had previously ignored: where people stood, what was said, what they were told afterward, and which parts of the story they had simply accepted. The person visible in the background became impossible to separate from those memories. Your soulmate realized their confession could no longer be reduced to admitting, "I made a mistake and I have carried the guilt." Their regret may still be real, but there may have been information they never knew. Someone else may have understood the danger, been present when they claimed they were absent, or influenced events without your soulmate realizing it. Still, the photograph only proves that someone was there. It does not automatically prove what they intended or what role they played. Now your soulmate must separate facts from assumptions, memories from evidence, and fear from what can actually be confirmed. That uncertainty has made the confession even harder, because they once believed they understood the entire story. But hiding is no longer protecting anyone. Your soulmate knows they must finally tell you what they know, what they believed, what they regret, and what they have recently discovered. They must also be honest about what remains unclear, instead of creating answers where none exist. The new evidence does not erase their responsibility or the pain of the loss, but it may change how they understand what happened. They are beginning to realize that honesty does not mean having every answer. Sometimes honesty means saying, "This is what I know, this is what I believed, this is what I discovered, and this is what I still cannot explain." When they finally place the truth in your hands, you will have the freedom to decide what it means, what you believe, and what boundaries you need.